Okay, we're going live. You won't see me for a minute, but I promise you'll see me in a second. Assuming that the connection is good. Guys, you can't see me yet, but if we're live, we're live. And let's see what's happening. Hello, everybody. I'm coming back, don't worry. All right. Oh, somebody's got a phone ringing. I love it. Well, you're all doctors. I hope so. Okay, we are live, officially live, guys. Hey, welcome to the show. I'm very, very honored to do the first live show on the home team of Freedom Mortgage with my friends who also happen to be physicians. All of them trained, but they're also great human beings. So welcome to the show. I've got Shweta Patel, Jeris Cox, and Joseph Rosado. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. So we're learning this whole process. I'm just checking out. I'm not ignoring you, but I think it's really good if you can give us kind of a background. We're going to talk about COVID-19 today, kind of updates, talk about your experiences, maybe give them some advice, talk about how to still conduct business, what's essential versus non essential, and what that really means. But we'll start with Shweta. If you can give us a little background on you, Dr. Patel, that would be awesome.
Sure. So thanks again for having me on the show, Ted. It's always a pleasure. So my name is Shweta Patel. I'm actually a gynecologist, and I'm also a military veteran, former U.S. Navy. And in terms of my background, I'm originally from New York, currently live in Orlando, and trying to do the best I can amidst this novel coronavirus pandemic that we're currently suffering.
Amen to that. All right, Jeris, you're up. Dr. Cox.
Hi, Ted. Nice to be on your show as well. I am also an OBGYN, but subspecialized in infertility. Have been in the career for 12 years. I recently retired from the Army as of March 1st, literally, after serving about 11 and a half years in the Army, and am undergoing new business ventures as we speak, or attempting to during this COVID-19 scare as well. So have lots to talk about, I'm sure.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Rosado.
Good morning, Dr. Joe Rosado, primary care physician by trade, former director of communicable disease for St. Johns County and St. Augustine. Managed and worked the swine flu. It wasn't a pandemic back then, but the whole swine flu situation from 2009, 2010 was responsible for all communicable diseases for St. Johns County for approximately 2.5 years.
All right, so you all are on the forefront of this, right? You're dealing with it, you're seeing it, no matter what your area of practice is, you all are seeing it and hearing it from a physician's standpoint, which is kind of what we all want. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think there's a lot of, on either side of it, I think there's way to this side, way to that side. It doesn't matter. What we need to do, I think, is really get the real deal of what's going on. So Shweta, I'm going to continue to start with you because I don't know when you're going to have to pop in, pop out. So tell us what you're seeing. You shared a picture of you in a big mask the other day. So share with us what you are seeing in your practice and what's going on.
So what I'm basically seeing right now is just the gradual buildup of concern and the subsequent resulting increase in measures people are taking to protect themselves, including my patients. Really, from an obstetrical and gynecologic standpoint, I'm fortunate that I have not yet been asked or required to be on the front lines like some of my colleagues in the emergency medicine field and the critical and pulmonary care field. Those are the folks that are really being tested right now in our country because they're the ones with the skills and the the knowledge of how to truly take care of patients that suddenly have acute decompensation of their respiratory system. With that being said, how I do feel like I've been constantly seeing coronavirus in terms of how it's impacting my local community, myself, is just the overall initial lack of information about it. And then when there was enough information available, the lack of momentum in terms of people recognizing that this is a true, genuine risk and crises that we're currently experiencing, and that if we don't take the appropriate measures to protect ourselves and to protect our community, this can continue to become that we will have a very hard time, coming out of. Not impossible. Obviously, our country is very strong. Our economy is known to be globally the strong economy, and we're looked up to globally. Right now, we're taking a beating, and economically at least, and impending a healthcare beating as well. Some places already experiencing that, like New York, New Orleans, Washington State. So really, I think the gradual overall awareness increasing has been what has been, like, in my experience, what's going on, at least here in Orlando. And people are starting to finally appreciate that this is not a drill. This is not a joke. Everyone, officials are being very clear about the precautions that need to be taken. And it's for your best interest, for your family's best interest, whether you feel susceptible or not. This is something that's going to impact you directly one way or the other, whether it's a family member that's sick,
right,
whether it's a healthcare provider in your community that becomes sick and no longer can care for you, or whether it's our economy is becoming sick because of how this is affecting it. So I think we all are starting to realize that we have to play our part.
Are you seeing the same thing, Dr. Cox? Jeris, are you seeing the same thing?
So while I'm not actively in the hospital, the fact that I just retired, we actually are getting recalled. So I had an email sent yesterday from the Department of Defense recalling any retired, discharged, separated doctors, specifically in the healthcare field, for emergency medicine, like Dr. Patel said, internal medicine, intensivists, critical care nursing. As you know, the Department of Defense is now sending, instead of deploying overseas, we're deploying huge groups of doctors to New York City, to Seattle, and to Los Angeles right now. Actually, I have several former colleagues that are headed to New York today as we speak. So yes, I think it is a very real situation. I think from the standpoint of just being in the medical field and in the military and having just left, seeing all these doctors going to these critical areas, which are really about a month ahead of internal US, if you think about it, because China was first, a month later was Italy, a month later was New York and Seattle. And what we're really trying to do is hopefully keep this from getting fully across, although we know almost every state has reported illnesses now, stopping it where we can and putting in the measures in place as soon as possible so that we don't let this take over the whole country. So from, a military standpoint, the military are pulling doctors to go across the big areas now and leaving the hospitals in kind of the middle of the US to help our doctors that are on the front lines. In regards to my subspecialty in particular, since I do fertility, our basically standard of care is provided by American Society of Reproductive Medicine. And about a week ago, they put out guidelines that no reproductive care, essentially that would be considered elective or non-urgent, should be shut down. So all of my reproductive, endocrinology, and fertility colleagues currently are not really able to do anything in their practices because our bread and butter is helping people get pregnant with different means. And so all of these fertility centers have had to shut down, mostly go to telemedicine for initial consults, but all of these patients, which are probably tens of thousands of patients that were waiting to go through IVF cycles, in vitro cycles to help them get pregnant, have been told that they cannot. and that has been put on hold. So if you add that to already the kind of hysteria and fear, there's a lot of things going on, and just
can y'all still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
There you go. Sorry about that. You know, it's all about technology. All right, Dr. Rosado, can you give us your take, what you're seeing or hearing?
Coming from a former public health position, having worked with a county health department and working intimately with the governor in, back in 2009, 2010, and seeing what's happening now, it's a bit of a challenge. And I've got some mixed emotions in that there's a lot of, as has been said by my colleagues, some misinformation, but also miscommunication. The CDC is promoting and saying one thing, the World Health Organization saying something else. Dr. Fiduci is on, 24/7, and then it's trickling down to our government officials, and our government officials are assuming roles and taking positions that are almost diametrically opposed to what is being recommended by the professionals, by the healthcare professionals. And if you're not a healthcare professional, you really need to step aside and let the healthcare professional dictate what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. But when I hear a commissioner from Seminole County make a statement, we're not going to implement anything because we don't see the need, yet my 80-year-old mother lives in Seminole County and my 78-year-old stepfather lives in Seminole County, I've got an issue with that. So, the New Yorker's coming out. I won't use any four-letter words. We agreed, but
it's just I think that people have been, because there's so much miscommunication out there. That's a great way, and because people are literally glued to the TV and they get their information from either the local news, usually national news is different, social media is different, and people don't really know what to do. So as human beings, we're going to go with the path of least resistance, and we're going to do the least thing we can do. That's our sort of our nature. So would you guys all vote that social, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Kat, that
social
I think
distancing is what I want to talk about. But
yes, actually, that's great, secretary there. But so I think that there's a side of our country that we're seeing in response to the novel coronavirus that I feel is central to the fact that we're not able to socially distance adequately in the way it needs to happen. And what I mean by that is, not to bring up another sad moment in our history, but during 9/11, people pulled together like never before. Not just New Yorkers, but the entire country. And I think that has something to do with the fact that there was an actual enemy, a visible, identifiable enemy that we could join together against. Not specifically an individual, but we knew what we were fighting, and we were united in that cause, and that allowed us to sort of put ourselves second to what the greater good was. I think this is part of the reason why this virus is really getting a one-up on us, and in every country it's hit, is because it's not a visible enemy. The people who are affected by it are our friends, our family, our neighbors, our leaders in the government. And you can't visualize that person as an enemy that you need to fight against by staying inside. Our only tools or our weapons for this virus is social isolation. And it's hard to do that. Really, it's hard to put yourself second to your own needs and to the needs of the greater good, because there's no single identifiable enemy that we can all get united against. So we're seeing a lot of people sort of get into the fight or flight and want everyone for themselves mentality, which is unfortunate, but understandable. But I really do think that that's part of the reason why social distancing, though imperative, has been so ununiform in its implementation, not just from government. Some states are doing it when they only have 5 cases. Some states are doing it after It takes 2,000 cases before they shut down. Florida is still not officially completely on sheltering in. Only Orange County and some counties have implemented it. This ununiform and disorganized isolating mandate is part of the reason why we're not able to get ahead of this yet. And
why do you think, I'll go to Joe. Let me go to Joe really quick. Why do you think, Joe, that, for example, in our state, and it's in a lot of states, so I'm not picking on Florida, but it feels like you've got, like Shweta said, you've got the government here. And then in our particular case, we have local government who stepped in my county anyway, in my city, and said, okay, we're not paying attention to what the government statewide did. We're going to do our own thing. Why is there such a disconnect between even the governmental agencies, which does nothing but cause more mass confusion about what's good, what do we do, how do we handle it?
Oh, I'm going to go out there since you asked.
Oh, Lord.
We are as good as our leaders, and my colleagues who are both ex-military will say that it starts from the top and works its way down. And if you don't have a strong leader, everything's going to fall apart below. And, you know, I supported him and I voted for him, but Governor DeSantis is dropping the ball and has dropped the ball. He's been very wishy-washy. He's shown lack of spine, and he's shown lack of consistency. That's
Agreed.
why.
How about you, Jeris? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And you know, I agree with everyone that's on this panel. I think, you know, a big reason this kicked us in the butt is that at least from a physician's perspective, up until a few weeks ago, the publicity, the fear, the so to speak, intelligence that we had on this novel virus wasn't well shared or publicized really until it hit Italy hard. I mean, we knew something was going into China, and you know, I'm not in the classified to know what did we really know at the top, but you know, it's a little scary because we are so behind. What did we not have to be prepared for this? And so we are getting our butt kicked, so to speak, with it, because even as a physician, up to 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm sure Joe probably is a little bit different since he's in a field that's a little bit more concrete with the preventive medicine and whatnot. But we were still looking at this like, is this anything different than a bad flu season? I mean, and I know we see a lot of this. Why is it different from flu and this new virus? And we've learned a lot, at least in the US in the past few weeks, of why it is different. But coming from just a physician, you know, working day to day, at first, this was something that we really thought was just another bad virus and no big deal. Some people are going to get hit hard that are immunocompromised or old, but we'll get through it. You know, we get colds and flu all the time. And what we've seen is that this is not the case. And as we've learned more, but the communication has lacked. So when we've learned more, it's taken weeks for us to learn really what's going on. And at that point, our boundaries in our country were already passed, and people already had it here, and people already had it in big cities. And with big cities, it spreads very fast, especially in New York and Seattle. And it hit us hard because we just really were not prepared. And I don't know, again, I can't speak from when the information or how the information came to us and to our higher ups in leadership. But the biggest problem is that leaving this state by state allows each state to be vulnerable and allows every person in that state to be vulnerable. For instance, Virginia literally just closed down restaurants 2 days ago.
Wow.
As of 2 days ago, you could still go and dine in a restaurant. They had specific settings that you had to be 6 feet apart. They had to cut their patronage into about 50%, but people could still go out and eat, which being right next to the Capitol is atrocious to me. I cannot believe the center of our government right outside of DC, I'm in Alexandria, was still allowing people to dine into restaurants as of 2 days ago. So I completely agree.
Mind-blowing, right? It's mind-blowing.
I'm going to try to join you guys back in a couple of minutes. But
that's fine, Shweta, whenever you can. So I want to ask about, especially in a lot of the areas where we have been shut down, they've divided into essential versus non-essential. Meaning, if you are in an essential industry, like real estate, for example, or anything having to do with that, you are allowed to continue to work under certain guidelines. If you're non-essential, you basically need to shut down completely. Here's what's happening, though. I can speak locally, and I'd love for you guys to talk about it. Essential doesn't mean that you can go out and dine in a restaurant and have contact with everybody and give everybody a great big bear hug. There are certain things that you can do, but I think people don't know how to operate their business within the guidelines. For example, on real estate, if you have a closing and you've got to sign documents, how do we do that? If you're having appraisal, how do you do that? Or if you're one of the essential businesses and you're partially open, like a grocery store, how do you handle that? I was at CVS the other day and they had markers that were 6 feet apart that you stood, and people stood right behind me. If I was a violent human being, I would have lost my mind. But I can't figure out, I mean, I don't know how much we have to dumb it down in order for people to understand it, but can you give them kind of an idea from your perspective of essential? How can you continue to do business and still make sure that you are protected?
Well, right now in the United States and in Florida, we're fortunate that we're not, our model doesn't look like other countries. I'm not a politician by any stretch of the imagination, but I have spoken and been invited internationally. And so I have a lot of friends and connections in China, in Malaysia, in Europe, et cetera. All the countries that have been hit, I've got different connections and friends. And I've been following this when all of this started in China, and I was in communication. And I spoke with someone last night in Malaysia. 95% of the country has shut down. They put everybody on a 28-day shutdown. And the only ones that are allowed to go out are those that must be out. And so this individual is a physician, and wherever she goes, she travels with her medical license. And if she stopped, which she has been on the road, she shows them her medical license and says, I'm on my way to the hospital, or I'm on my way to my office. And she typically gets a police escort to whatever area she's going to. As of today, they've extended that to where, you cannot leave within a 1 kilometer radius of your home. Wow. And people are now ratting their neighbors out. If they see somebody out in the community, they call the officials and say, hey, my neighbor's out walking around or doing this or doing that. So, that's at one extreme. Ours, the essential, as physicians, people are going to be able to come to our office. I will say kudos to the Board of Medicine in the state of Florida that created an emergency order allowing physicians to perform telemedicine and telehealth, which is phenomenal. Every one of our patients that we've managed virtually have loved it. And we've got very sick patients in our office, patients with leukemia and pancreatic cancers, all kinds of major ailments. And they're all very, very gracious to the fact that they can get their medications, see us virtually, and get their medical attention. So that's been huge.
That is huge. How about you, Dr. Cox?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you're talking about essential, I mean, there's a lot of essential personnel in the U.S. to allow us to survive, so to speak, in the sense of, obviously, yes, doctors are the first things everyone thinks of right now because of dealing with a health scare. But, there are truckers that have to get groceries to restock our grocery stores, to restock pharmacies. And those are big things that are workers that, we don't think of, but they are potential vectors, or they're, but they're also needed. So, right. Again, I think this comes back down, to leadership. And the fact is that leaving it state by state concerns me, because every state, as you've seen, just as Virginia being delayed and stopping, their distancing, so to speak, it allows this, potential spread to go on. And I think there's some balance. So, in Malaysia, a complete lockdown, not getting to go outside your house or within a 1 mile radius, I don't know how well people would, I don't know how well that would go in our country, for sure, because, one, do we even have the ability to secure it and mandate it? But two, we're just a different country. A lot of people have animals. They don't want to walk their dogs, and get fresh air. But on the other side of that is, you don't need to be going to the grocery store if you don't need something. You don't need to go to the pharmacy unless you need meds right now. Unfortunately, a lot of us will run out of hair dye, and it is what it is, you know. Life
My
sucks,
hair needs to be cut
right?
so badly right
I got
now.
mine done just a few days ago, so I'm good, but I have no more
The roots
boxes
are
left.
looking bad, Ted.
But it's one of those things that you just really got to be smart. And I think that people really have to realize, you know, I went to the grocery store the other day just because we had no meat left, and there were tons of people in there. It was impossible to stay 6 feet away from each other. And so when we talk about trying to implement measures, really, I think that the grocery stores, the pharmacies, we need to start limiting how many people are allowed in the door at a time. And that stinks. And you know, that puts you into the aspect of, well, then people are waiting outside in line. How far away do they need to be from each other outside to wait to get into the store? But these are measures, if they're not taken, this disease is going to continue to spread, because now you've taken all these people outside of work and they're at home, but then they're going to the grocery store or the pharmacies that are packed full of people. So it's got to be something from HHS and down, is in my opinion. I don't think it should be. I'm proud that Florida finally got an executive order, but it took them a while too, because we had the spring breakers out there just, you know.
Oh my gosh. That video of that one guy being interviewed, I thought this is the end of humanity right here.
That was
it
our
was so bad. It was embarrassingly bad. All right. You know, I love to end on positive notes. What do you all think the positive outcome when we're all, let's say we're all through this, and I don't know when this ends. I have no crystal ball, but eventually we will, I believe in my heart, we're going to get a grasp and we're going to get control of it, whatever that looks like. What do you see some of the positive outcomes that have come from this, or in the future, what's going on? I mean, I can share mine and then you can bounce off it. I feel like interaction with your family has certainly improved. Slowing down has really impacted people. When you're not on the go constantly at every place and you don't take time to rest, that's our lives. Most of us lead. We're being forced to figure out how to slow down within our worlds. And I feel like people are adapting, like we're adapting here. You know, it's hard for me. I'm a social animal. So I want everybody next to me and I want to hug everybody because I'm Italian, right? So we just want a big giant hug. This was hard, but I've adapted, and look, you can still feel the energy. We're still getting a message across. We're still sharing information. So can you guys, parting words on what you think the positive is going to be, or what you're seeing the positives are right now? I'll let anybody go.
Joe, you want to go?
Yeah,
go ahead, Dr. Cox. Ladies first.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think that the positive is, as a nation, I think, unfortunately, while we were behind the flow, I think as a nation, we're starting to pull together. And I'm seeing that every day in so many different shapes and forms, from the teachers' parades that are going through the neighborhoods with signs saying, hey, we miss you students, keep reading, wash your hands, which I got to see yesterday in a neighborhood, you know, to just, like you said, FaceTiming your family and checking in on them a little bit more. And then just actually taking a step back and saying, wow, how much we take for granted sometimes. Just that breath of fresh air outside, taking a full lung breath of that in, knowing that some of our colleagues, potentially friends and loved ones, are in a hospital right now, or people we don't even know but aren't able to do that because they were unfortunate to get exposed to this. I think it allows you just to take a step back and say, wow, our life and what we have in the US is great. We have so much freedom and liberty, and taking a step back and having that taken away a little bit allows us to appreciate where we are, and it hopefully will allow us to stick together and band together and stay inside for whatever 2 weeks or 4 weeks it takes for us to get through this, so that we can go back to our daily life. It gives you a better appreciation for where you are, for sure.
I agree. All right, you want to wrap it up, Dr. Rosado?
Well, looking to the future is what I'm seeing is just more innovation and more people thinking more outside of the box. You know, the idea that we have to be in the same room face to face to evaluate and treat a patient, I think that pretty much has gone by the wayside, because we can manage patients. It has been demonstrated that we can manage patients virtually. I agree that in an initial visit, it's always good to see and feel and touch the patient. But beyond that, I think that, you know, we can manage patients, you know, virtually. I'm also of the opinion that education has really stepped up, and how our, children, how our future generations are going to be educated, that you don't always have to be in a classroom. And some people learn better virtually as opposed to being in a classroom with a school teacher in front of them. So I think that things have been more innovative, and different ways of getting products and produce to us, different ways that new business is going to flourish from this, new ideas, new concepts.
I agree.
Good.
All right, you all have been amazing. What an honor to have you, and of course, Dr. Patel on the show today. Thank you for all you're doing, front lines, keeping us safe, helping out, whatever you're doing. It's very important. I hope that everybody listening kind of got something from it, but they're all reachable. I won't give you their cell phone numbers, but I tagged them all in the post. So make sure if you have a question, feel free to get it to me or get it to one of the doctors, and I'll get it to one of them. I think it's really important that we continue the open lines of communication. We've already opened it up, so let's continue it so we can continue to educate ourselves and educate our community around us. Thank you all so much. Guys, first home team live Facebook show, and it was awesome. So appreciate your friendships. We'll see you soon. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.